access to a system, so you gain an access. Okay. Also, you can do cracking password in the escalation or privilege escalation. Okay. Why? Because cracking password will allow you to maybe crack the password of a root for an admin, or also cracking password, guys, can be happen once you escalated your privilege. Okay, you can now have an admin rights and try to escalate other passwords that exist in these systems. So you can also use cracking password techniques to extract all the password in these systems and really crack it later on. And it will not happen before escalation of privilege. Why? Because only when you escalated your privilege, you will be able to access the password file by default, whether in Linux or Windows. So again, cracking password can be happening in the gaining access stage, or can be happening in the maintaining access. Why? Because it happened right after escalation of privilege. That's why in our website, we have already added the password, cracking password in the end, because, and this is not really the end of the cyber security ethical hacking methodology, because once we have done this, guys, usually we do something called post exploitation. And post exploitation itself, guys, it's a really big topic. You can just spend hours and hours studying about post exploitation. So what we will try to do today and tomorrow, inshallah, we'll try to really scratch the surface of post exploitation. What the attacker do once they got the root access here. Okay, do we have a methodology for post exploitation? Yani, can we do anything in post exploitation, or does have a certain process that we will follow to exploit the system? And what once after we exploit the systems, we're following certain steps until we have fully compromising this network or the system. So maintaining access is basically one of them, because the attacker doesn't want to lose his basically admin rights on this machine. The first thing he will definitely do maintaining access. So we'll talk about what is post exploitation in general. We'll talk about what is maintaining access means, and we're talking about a little bit also about the password cracking one more time. So this is basically what we have in this chapter so far. Okay, guys. So where is post exploitation? Here. If we divided our really attacks to a three stages, or we divided the ethical hacking methodology to three stages, we'll find pre-exploitation is basically footprinting or reconnaissance, scanning, and enumeration. If we jump to exploitation phase or category, we'll find remote exploitation and gaining access to the system, getting information, and then we said privilege escalation. Because why? Because the attacker really wanted to be an admin, and we have explained in the last maybe Thursday certain techniques that attackers will do to really gain or to escalate their privilege. And this is by maybe exploiting new vulnerability in your system, looking at misconfigurations that can be used to really escalate their privilege, or maybe do something like a DLL injection. So this is another attack, or maybe stealing a token from someone in the systems and use this token to be an admin. So we have discussed some technology, but again, there is so many techniques under privilege escalation. And again, what we have already covered in the last Thursday section is a scratch of the surface. So I would highly recommend, guys, if you really like it, the ethical hacking, I would say, course. There is so many courses later on that you can take for advanced ethical hacking that will require even you to learn how to do a little bit of programming. Because as you guys remember, I think in Wednesday or Tuesday, we discussed that some vulnerability that exists will require you to understand how memory works and how we can inject, certain code to really buffer or overflow the buffer and have buffer overflow vulnerabilities. So it will require you to do some sort of, programming and understanding how to use PowerShell to write script and everything. Okay, guys? So this is really what we mentioned. And we also mentioned in privilege escalation that privilege escalation can be done in two levels. One of the level is horizontal escalation, and one of them is really vertical escalation. And we mentioned there is a different type of privilege that the user, whether in Linux and Windows, will try to get to. So this is really important topic to talk about. So Once we finish this stage, we will look at the post exploitation. So post exploitation include, first of all, I wanted really to maintain my access to make sure that I will be resistant in this computer. Okay, I wanted to gather sensitive information in this computer. So I wanted really to gather certain password file, or to be maybe able to crack other password that the user is using to access maybe another website or his bank website. Okay, and then he will, the attacker, if he doesn't really like the computer, or if he didn't find an interesting thing in the computer, once he has an access, once he's maintain his access, once he gathered enough information about this computer, he will start to gather information about the network. Okay, and once he gather information about network, he will try to pivot his attack. Pivoting means lateral movement. Lateral movement, it means I will do island hopping from one machine to another machine until I reach the system that I'm looking for, or the system that will allow the attacker to achieve his objective. So this is basically the post exploitation, and we'll explain what is post exploitation phases in a bit. Okay, guys. So far, so good. Any questions here? Okay, guys. So today we'll explain what is post exploitation as a process means. We look at the privilege escalation. We have already covered this part. So we'll look at the maintaining access part. Okay, we were looking at pillaging, and pillaging it means in English just stealing with force. Okay, so basically this is where the attacker will try to steal data from these systems. Okay, whether cracking password, so with force it will crack more password and gain more access. Okay, and then here mapping the internal network. This is again a scanning again. We have mentioned that we have done scanning, but this scanning, guys, was done for the external network. Okay, this is the attacker what didn't really have any foothold within the organization. But now the attacker really have a foothold within the organization, and now he wanted to really map your network. He wanted to understand how is your network consist of, where is the firewall, how is the DMZ work, how your internal network work. Do you have, for example, how many routers, how many switches, where is your database is, where is your, for example, the customer database is. So this is what we call lateral movement here. Okay, so if you guys allow me to show you how lateral movement here, the attacker maybe they have already exploited one of these systems here, or a point of entry, a web server. Okay, and once he exploited your web server, okay, then he will try to move internally within your network to reach your basically asset data delivery here, servers, or maybe a server with a database. So he's trying to really map your network. So the attacker wanted to really understand how your network looks like, and once he managed to find the server that it does have very critical information, whether it's a trade secret or a database, it will try to do data exploitation. So this is what is lateral movement, and sometimes we call it pivoting. And that's it will require from the attacker to do another scanning to understand your network. But this time, guys, the attacker would be, I would say, the difference between the normal scanning and this scanning. This scanning, it should be very careful when he's doing this scanning. Why? Because it's easily can be detected by your SIM engineers. Because if you having a machine that started to scan another machine within the network, or send hack, or send or maybe idle scan within the network, you can tell there is something suspicious about this machine. So this is the internal network scanning should be very done with a lot of careful, especially if we have a team who is really there to detect any suspicious activity. This is one thing. And finally, we look at exploitation to other machine, and pivot the attack, or pivot the exploitation from one machine to one machine. And this is exactly the island hopping mentality that we talked about long time. And طبعا for sure we have seen this before, but this is again, it's how exactly your exploitation happening until you reach to the post exploitation. So we have stages, and even in post exploitation, guys, we will have a stages. So now let's define us. Already we talked about this before, so there's no point to talk about it again. So again, what is the post exploitation? So the definition here for post exploitation, guys, you will find it here. Okay, so the post exploitation, it's some activity or encompass some activities. Yani we have a process that penetration tester undertakes when the target system has been compromised. Determine the machine value. Okay, so this is first of all, I wanted to understand how valuable is this machine. So I exploited your web application, or I exploited maybe your internet system, or maybe I exploited your SharePoint or your mail server. How important can I find everything I want from these systems? Okay, or I need to really look for another system. So this is the first thing that the attacker will do, is to determine how valuable is this machine. And then the network infrastructure maintain access. So here is, I would say, the second step is to maintain access. خلاص, I already exploited the machine. I privilege escalated my privilege to a higher privilege. Now I wanted to really to do what? Maintaining access. What we mean by maintaining access, I wanted to be persistent in this machine. Why? Because it allow me to come back at any time. Allow me, if someone else restarted this machine, to not lose all these things that I have done. Okay, it allow me also, if someone patched this machine with the right patch or installed a new security controls, to come back to this machine. So his main first thing to do is to maintain access, and then gather information about especially if this is not his main target, because sometimes you compromise a machine, it's a part of the domain, but it doesn't give you all the access to the domain. So maybe your next move is try to really exploit the Active Directory, or maybe maintaining or maybe having the access for the Active Directory, or attacking Active Directory. So this is it means gather information about the networks, and then later on profit. So if you want to really in other words, what you do or have to do when you get an access to the target. So this is basically what is post exploitation. I like also, there's another definition maybe later on here, if you guys allow me to jump a little bit. There is here is also what is post exploitation. Getting root is just the beginning, okay? And how do you spread after you getting the root, and how to manage assets you're going along. This is also a definition for post exploitation. So this is also a nice definition. If you remember, guys, I told you post exploitation is a process, and the process means that we have stages, and in these stages, I'm gonna show you how does this stages looks like. So here it starts with privilege escalation and maintaining access. Plus, we already talked about privilege escalation, so now he is a root. Okay, now it's all about maintaining access. The first step is maintaining access. We talk about maintaining access in a completely different section. Okay, then now gathering information. We called it data harvesting. So what kind of information? Basically information about this machine. Okay, I wanted to really find out what kind of users they are using this machine. Okay, maybe I have already exploited the machine for the CEO, or maybe I exploited the machine for someone in IT. So I wanted really to gather as much information about this machine. Maybe he's using a website that will allow him to manage all the manage all the network devices within the organization. So let me try to maybe install something in the background to steal his username and password. So I know that you have done this before, maybe in a lab or two, is once you exploited the machine and once you have a root access, maybe you can run, keystroke logger, or sometimes we call it the key logger, okay, to log everything that the user is doing in this machine. So once you do this, guys, I can really figure out what is the username and password he is using it to access maybe network devices. So this is also important. If he has some password files here in these computers, I'm interested also to crack this password. Maybe I will find a very interesting password in this computer looked in before. So this is all, it's happened in the data exploitation or harvested. It means I'm gathering more information about this machine itself. So I can determine how valuable is this machine is. If I found some this machine is connected to some shares, maybe I can use NetBIOS to look at these shares and see if there is something interesting that I can grab from these shares as well. So this is also considered a data harvesting. Once I finish with this machine, now I'm looking to really spread around the network. And the spreading around the network means I want to be able to go from one machine to one machine to another machine and all this stuff. So how can I do this? Again, this is what will take me to step 3 in the post-exploitation. It's called internal network scan. Internal network scan, okay, now I can use so many techniques because I already know enumeration and I know that I'm within the network right now. So I can use the same techniques I used in enumeration to look at my internal network. So I know for fact some protocols within my network are really open by default. So NetBIOS is open by default because we are using to share and do file sharing. DNS is open by default in so many systems. Okay, I can also use something like SNB. Okay, so which is a simple network management protocol. I can use enumeration for DNS. So maybe I can really download all the data from a DNS, which is really we talked about it before. It's called zone transfer in enumeration. So this is also it's an internal network scan. But if we talk about internal network scan, this is we called it before enumeration. So once you enumerated the network and once you understand the environment around you, once you understand where is the firewall, which segment you are in the network, later on you can do what exploitation of new system and pivoting. Pivoting means the attacker will be just moving from one machine to another machine when he really finish this. So basically, if I exploited a web server, I wanted to pivot to a database server or maybe the application server. Once I'm the application server, I can pivot myself again to the database servers until I reach the database server, and then later on, I can start to exfiltrate data. This is are the 4 steps for both. Does this make sense, guys? So far, so good. Post
Yes, so
exploitation
far so good.
as through lab once we access the meta potato after using the scripts and set required options. Yes, I agree with you also, يا أستاذة. Who wrote this? Tagreed, I think, or me. Tagreed. Yes, I agree with you, Tagreed. So Tagreed is saying post exploitation usually when we exploit the machine and got the metaprotector, okay, and manage to elevate our privilege to maybe an admin or a root or a system, okay, we can later on start to really gather more information. So you gather more information about the IP address of this machine. You gather more information about which network it's connected to. You gather information about the password file in this machine. This is all you can done. You can enable the camera to get to know who is there. You can install Mimikatz to crack the password. So all of this can happen right after you exploit a machine. So I agree with you. Okay. So we talked about lateral movement, which is basically pivoting. So this is just a diagram to show you how pivoting it looks like. So this is how it looks. Okay, and then we're gonna talk about a little bit about what you should do if you are a penetration testers and you exploited a machine. Okay, and this is back, guys, to something called rule of engagement. Okay, because once you exploited a machine, this is if you guys remember when we talked about vulnerability management process, we talked in the vulnerability management process, you can find the vulnerability and validate this vulnerability, okay? And once you validate this vulnerability, it's a real vulnerability and you exploit it, you should stop in this case. Why you should stop? Because the next stage is post exploitation, you're gonna modify. Because the first stage in post exploitation is first is to be in persistence, and persistence mean you're gonna change or you modify the system. Okay, is your contract with the company. This is what we go back to the rule of engagement. Is the rule of engagement of the company. It's saying that you can modify the system after you exploit it, because exploitation, خلاص, we understand this system vulnerable, he managed to exploit it. The next stages all require you to modify. And that's why we mentioned before, it's easy to catch the attackers in this stage because he is now leaving traces around. So the attacker will do, we want it to be persistent. Persistence means you need to add yourself in the registry, or maybe you need to add yourself in a scheduled task, or maybe you need to add yourself in certain places in the temp files, or install more files in the computers. So all of these guys will require the attacker to modify, or the pen tester to modify the system. Okay, so can I modify the system? Because modification the system can sometimes lead to the system become unstable, or can lead to the system to be really not doing what is required from the system to do. So this is again, guys, it's based on, if you're doing a penetration testing, is based on the rule of engagement from the beginning. When you're running post exploitation task, be sure that you have the permission and the right to modify services, machine configuration, escalation privilege, gathering sensitive information, delete logs, and so on. So all these stages is part of post exploitation, but you need to get a permission for it. If you don't have a permission for it, be enough. You should be very happy that you already find the vulnerability and validated the vulnerability by exploitation, take the screenshot, and that's it. So this is the first, I would say, consideration you should do when you look at post exploitation. Another consideration here, guys, you always keep track for what you have been doing in this machine. So if you added a backdoor, you need to say, I have added a backdoor. If you change the registry, you should say, I have changed the registry. If you installed some certain tools in this machine, you should write down or track down what you have done. Why? For two reasons. First of all, because you really need later on to clear your tracks. Okay, so you are acting as a professional, so you really need to clear these tracks. Another thing, guys, you don't want to keep a backdoor. Halas, you already done your penetration testing in a professional way, and you forget your backdoor. Maybe someone else, maybe an attacker or someone even within the organization, he will find this backdoor later on and use it to exploit the system. So you will be blamed for it. So one of the things that you should do, so the first of all, you really need to understand the rule of engagement. The second stage here is to track to changes that you have done in the system. Any tracks, you need really to clear it later on after you finish the penetration testing task, or you really need to track to clear it because maybe someone will find this stuff and really can cause harm to the company because of it. So you should always track the action taken against the compromised machine. This is include date and time, the change made to machine documents, service, application, and configuration, but also private data discovered, okay, methods used to maintain access, and so on. The information contain a list of changes made should be also included in your final report. Okay, so this is an extra thing that you should add in your report or your final report that you said, okay, when you exploited the systems, what have you changed? Okay, what did you add to be resistance? Where is the registry keys that you changed? So this is all should be added to your report. Another thing that you also need to do in the post exploitation, guys, all data discovered or gathered during this penetration testing, it should be really, I would say, handled by very secretive way. Why? Because this is basically a company confidential data. So if you find a vulnerability in the company, especially if you are insider or you're doing, I would say, white box penetration testing, you should deal with this as a very important, and you should also try to make sure these data are really handled in a secure way. And right after you finish the penetration testing, you should get rid of this data, because if someone finds this data later on, he can use it against the company. Okay, so this is something you should do about it. All data discovered and gathered must be protected. This means that you must encrypt on your own penetration testing machines. So when you add these files in your machine, all the data should be encrypted. Why? And it should be password protected. Why? Because you don't want someone really to steal your laptop and find this data as clear text. So this is can be really bad for you and bad for the company who is really hired you to do this penetration testing. And right after you finish the penetration testing and handle the data to the client, you should permanently delete all these kind of data. Okay, guys. Even when reporting sensitive information to your client, such as a screenshot containing username or password, be sure that you always obfuscate and mask the data. It means that you really, when you give a screenshot, that's here you cracked some password or here you gathered some username, try to mask the data or try to hide part of the data. Sometimes if you're watching a video, even for penetration testers, you will find the name of the folder or the name of the user that uh, they really exploited. They hide the name or they hide the password with a mask, so you cannot really see the full name or the full password. You just see a little bit of indication they managed to get this username and password. This is also important in this stage of post exploitation. Uh, Another thing, when you are sending this data to the client, also don't just send it in a clear text because or an email that someone can really intercept in between. And as we all know, that emails, guys, are really not secure way to convey confidential messages because basically they can anyone can really see the content of the email if especially if he's having the proper sniffing tools and he is in a setting in a specific area in the network. So make sure that you really encrypt the data as you are sending in the client, or maybe you can upload this data to a secure location like SFTP server or HTTPS server, and then require the client to access this place and then download this file. And this is what I have seen they do a lot, especially in penetration testing. Very rare cases when you send an email with the penetration testing final report to the client. Okay, guys. As you will see later, and the first step you will run once you compromise a machine is maintaining access. So maintaining access basically creating a backdoor you can so you come or persistence. It allow you get back on the machine whenever you want, usually a backdoor on the system. When using such methods, implement some type of authentication in order to avoid other from using it and delete everything once the penetration testing complete. So this is back again to clearing your tracks, and clearing your tracks means that you are already give me 1 second, guys, because I need to plug my charger. Okay, so this is also back to what we have covered before. That's we you really need to make sure that you clear your data. Okay, and clearing the data here means if you created a backdoor, don't leave this backdoor for anyone to use it later on. So manage to add a certain authentication to avoid other from compromising this machine. And then when you finish your engagement with this company or your penetration testing, make sure that you deleted this backdoor. So this is another also important fact you should look at. Another important thing you should be aware of is how to handle permanent changes in a exploited system. If the rule of engagement permit these edits, and if you are going to delete logs from the remote machine, be sure to back up them before you actually deleting or modifying them. So this is also, again, we're going back to the stage after post exploitation, which is basically cleaning the logs or cleaning tracks. It means if your rule of engagement allow you to go and really delete logs from the systems or modify the logs so you can cover your tracks as an attackers. Okay, make sure that before you clearing any logs or you deleting any logs to have a backup from these logs. Why? Because clearing logs also considered a modification in the systems. Okay, if they allow you, that's okay, but you really need after you finish your engagement to return everything to previous states. And one of the ways to return everything log to the previous stage is basically is to really recover from this. Okay, so to have a backup from this. Okay, um, so in a post exploitation, guys, we will look at the first of all password management. So this is what do you do after you get food. So we'll talk about password management and what he means exactly by password management. So maybe you are exploited the systems or exploited multiple systems in a within a network, and now you want to manage these passwords. how to management. We wanted to know, for example, which password will be allowed to access which system. Okay, which password will allow you to access more systems. Okay, if you exploited 1,000 machines, okay, how you can really maintain all the password that you really gathered about these machines. Okay, because you cannot just copy and paste this password and you say, oh, I really compromise this machine at this with this username and password and write it down in text file. That is okay if you exploited maybe 1 or 2 machine. But if you exploited 10 or 15 machine within the organization, which username and which passwords you really need to manage these passwords. And also you really need to understand which password will allow you to access more machines. This is really important. Password management is an important topic. Also, persistence mean how to be added to the system in a way that it allow you to come back. Okay, we said that is important for the attacker, and this is the first thing the attackers will do in the post exploitation. Also, being stealth, okay, or evade detections. So this is this is what I have told you guys before, and I'm keep telling you. Anything that the attacker will do right now in the systems or to the other systems, if you wanted to scan them, it's easy now to detect him because now he's really present in your network. So any SIM solution and any anomaly detection techniques will allow you to detect him. So the attacker in this stage want to be really as much as stealth as possible and evade detections. Okay. Also, we can do also in this stage user identity theft. So we steal user identity. Why? Because basically you're sitting in his computer, you see all his access and session to different website and his bank and all the stuff. This is will allow you to also do user identity theft. Also, further modification means you can install more application in the systems to crack more password or to maybe to do something more harmful or to maybe implant a rootkit or whatever. So you can really do further modification in this case. And last thing here, guys, is automation and mass ownage means that if you really wanted to really automate this process and really own a lot of machines within the systems, or maybe own the Active Directory, how you can automate this. So we can cover as much as we can today, and tomorrow I promise we will continue because we have still, I would say, 3 days until the exam. So every day will come for 1 hour, maybe, or maybe 50 minutes to talk a little bit or to show you a little bit about post exploitation, and then we can practice later on with Amir and Asad in the session that afternoon. So the next few days, guys, is not gonna be like rest. It's not gonna be we all know we're also coming early and we try to leave early to allow you guys to prepare for the exam as well. Okay. Um, Here, this is what I have shown you guys. There is a lot of tools that will allow you to get really a root permissions. And again, some of them are Metasploit, Core Impact, Canvas, Standalone. This is all frameworks for exploitation, okay, and post exploitation. So, for example, Metasploit, guys, does have a specific area in Metasploit called post exploitation. And post exploitation is basically is all about I exploited the system, I privilege escalate myself to a root. Now what can I do next? So you will have a lot of I would say exploitation or post exploitation. So if I wanted to gather certain information from this Windows machine, if I wanted really to crack a certain application that it runs in this machine, if I wanted really to crack a certain service that's running this machine, okay? If I wanted to really implant keylogger in this machine. So this is what we call post exploitation. This is all it exists and it will help us in doing this. So if I just wanted to jump a little bit in the lecture, if we jump a little bit here, so you can see here, guys, in Metasploit, there is have something called post, and in post there is some exploitation for post exploitation for Windows specifically, and these are gather credential. And you can gather credential from really different sources. If you guys look at this, these are all really different sources. So if you have something like WSFTP clients, okay, if you have one SSP, there is a specific, I would say, exploit for WinSSP. What is a WinSSP? Guys, never seen WinSSP before? This is WinSSP, okay? This WinSSP is a lot of administrators are using to access using SSH remote devices. Okay, and it makes it automated. Why? Because all what you need to add is to add your username, your file, your computer, your maybe router or switch or server that you want to access. You save your credential and then hit OK. Once you hit OK, it will be here in your fingertip. You just double click, and when it's be accessing it. I think I have one SSB. Yes. So this is a Win SSB in my computer. Usually I know that with Win SSB, see, I already have some server that I'm connected to it as a root, and it will save also the password. So next time I wanted to connect, I'm just gonna hit login, and if this server is up and running, I will be able to. So I have a specific post exploitation module to just try to exploit WinSSP and steal the password of WinSSP. So this is, we see that's how important of gathering password from the target machine itself. Okay, so once I get this, I can run more exploit to really gather more information and credentials from this machine. And this is for sure will allow the attacker later on to attack more devices or to have control over more devices. But the more password I'm gathering, okay, I wanted to save it. Okay, how can I save it? Because right now, I cannot write everything down for everything I'm compromising. I compromise one SSB, I found 10 machine, 10 different passwords, 10 different usernames. What can I do? And this is also why we talked about password. Just close this one and close this one. Okay, guys, so this is the post exploitation gathering information, and you can see some of them are really enumerating sequels. Some of them are really Fitzilla is a FTP servers, and there's so many. Some of them are MS SQL. This is Windows local hash dump. So you can really, if you find yourself within a SQL server, you can do this. Some of them are really looking at the McAfee itself. Okay, if it does have some password, because usually McAfee is running with an admin rights in your machine, so I can hash dump this server, sorry, the password. So this is all under gather credential in the post exploitation. But again, I agree with the Tagreed that is really Metasploit is one of these really things that will allow me to do this stuff. Okay, but what after breaking in? Lots of random tools, okay, little automation or standardization. Okay, was very specific tools called Architect. It's also hard to use, poorly documented, but it allows you to maintain what you should do after you exploit the machine. There is a lot of miscellaneous, often obvious, okay, not scalable of 10,000 of hosts. What we mean by this, guys, if I manage to exploit once 10,000 machine, if I wanted to gather their information, I wanted to keep their password, I wanted really to keep this after exploitation in a centralized place, because you just have to know that you have a session now with an Metasploit. This data, guys, once you lose the session, it will be lost. So I wanted a tool, or I wanted a way to really maintain. So he's saying here, okay, it's not scalable if you have 1,000 hosts, or maybe the attacker managed to exploit different 1,000 companies. So how can the attacker, he can just move between session and session, okay? And that's why one of the reasons that we have a command and control center sometimes owned by the attacker, because he wanted to maintain all this data about the machines and about the organization he already exploited. So this is something that we find a challenge on it, especially the attacker, and that is one of the reasons why the attacker will have a command and control center. Okay, so after this is local information gathering. Local information gathering means it's happening on this machine. I'm gathering information about password on this machine. So password is saved in Chrome, or password is saved in WinSSB, or password saved in maybe your browsers. So this is all how to do this and how to do password management. We find until now an issue with this. Large bin test will allow me to have over thousands of passwords. Okay, testing a cracked password in many systems can be time consuming. So this is also what he's trying to say here is that let me get all this password in a centralized place and start to crack them. Because if I wanted to really crack the password in all this easy to detect, also it will not be time. It's going to be time consuming. Keeping track of all this cracked session is going to be hard for the attacker. Building and growing your word list lets you crack faster. Means that every time you crack a password, okay, you find a new password. You wanted to add it to your word list. And again, what is a word list? Is something like a dictionary. But this dictionary, guys, is dictionary specifically I'm creating, okay, and I'm gonna use later on to exploit another machines. Why? Because we as a human tend to use this specific password over and over. So, for example, you will find your password in Gmail very close to your password in Hotmail, very close to the password that you're using in the bank. So the attacker realized this tendency in humans. So they wanted really to create a specific password list. So once he have this password, he can try it later on your social media or even your online banking system. Again, Maltego will help him to really scan this basically ID and find all basically transformation or related IDs for this specific persons, and then later on he can really access all the systems, especially if he gets a valid password. And that's why it's explained on one way. If your password is exploited, guys, you should if you are using very similar passwords in other website, you should right away change this password. Why? Because it's going to be matter of time, okay, until and the attacker will be able to get to all accounts. How? Because we can really, there is some attacks in password specifically called rules-based attacks, which is you provide a password and then you can say use different combination, okay, after this password of some this password against this website until one of them are working. So this is also something you should be able to know. Aids in cleaning up a stage, trying account systems. Okay, this is also something about password management. Um, Here it's saying password management goal, acquire password, storage, organize and tracking what password goes to which hosts. So this is important again. So first of all, we need a storage for all this password. Okay, once we compromise a machine, if we gather password, we wanted a storage. We wanted to organize these specific password and to track them. How we can organize it? It's organize it based on what password goes to which host, okay, what password are shared, so you can is password are shared between different computers, or maybe I found an account that allow me to log into different two servers. So this is called password shared. Which user have access to what resources? Okay, so this is also something related to password, and this is related to the token that the users will get when he log into the system. So I wanted to really organize this. Why? Because it allowed the attackers to really have these things in the tip of his finger, and it allows the attacker to do more exploitation within the system in a better way, because he understands I compromise this machine, this is the password for this machine, and this is the password for this user, and this is what the user can access with these passwords. So if it's organized, the attacker will, it will help the attacker to really compromise more and achieve more. Reuse for future for further access. Again, I'm once I have this password organized, I can reuse it easier in the future. Expanding word list for faster cracking means every time the attackers will really gather new password from your systems or from the networks that he compromised, he can really add it to his word list. And this is later on, I seen this also, but it's not nice to explain to show it as well. Sometimes, guys, in a big company, they usually give you a password which is really related to the company name. So if you work for a company XYZ, their initial password for you is going to be XYZ at 456. Okay, then give it to all the users. Okay, so if some of the users that you have in your organization for XYZ is using the default password and you manage to really crack one of these passwords, it's also a matter of time until the attacker will find this password. And that's why we should include in our password policy is to rechange the default password. And that's why in AWS, for example, there's a checkbox every time you create a password for one of your colleagues who's gonna access AWS, that he need to really change the password next time he log in. Why? Because we are worried of these kind of attacks. Okay, so this is again, so the password management, guys, is a process, and you should follow certain steps from acquiring the password all the way until we reuse this password again. And that's why here in this specific stage, it's saying that we have something called password management stages. And the password management stages, it will tell you, highlight you where you are right now, and the password that you, again, this is the password after you compromise the system. It's not before. This is the post exploitation. Okay, so we're talking about the password after you really have a privilege on this on this machine. So the password you gather from this user, for example. And again, here it starts with acquiring, and it's giving you here, guys, how to acquire passwords. So for sure, we can do cat etc shadow. So this is to acquire this file, especially if you are, again, if you are an admin. Okay, you do SQL query that to acquire the password. Once you acquired the password, you look at the decision. Okay, which one of these uh, basically hashes, it's really more important for me at that stage. Okay, maybe I found an admin account password, or maybe local admin account, or maybe some domain admin login to this machine. So this is will be the decision which one is to crack. So this is a decision of really adding priority for which password is important for me right now to crack, and take time. So cracking, again, it will require me some specific tools to crack short river can 10 feet or 10 feet. This is all tools that will allow you to crack. And once you crack, look at this, guys. Here, it's tracking which stage tracking. Tracking is here. Tracking which password go to which host. I don't know have any tools right now to do this. What password are shared? You don't have also tools for this. What user have access to what resources? You don't also have. So this is also an issue for the penetration testers, an issue for attackers now to really track, and that's why a lot of them they're doing it manually. Okay, and then in reusing, okay, this password they mentioned here, core impact will allow you to do reusing once compromised. But again, this is as you can see, this is the stages of acquiring passwords. Sorry, password management after you compromise the machine. Okay, guys, this is existing tools. And again, what each tool you are doing, I know that you have already tried Kian, maybe you have tried Core Impact, maybe John and the River. I'm sure that you maybe one of the labs was already about talking about John and the River. But if you didn't try it, I think it's today, maybe later afternoon with asset session, you should be able to try one of these tools, because this one of the tools is even beneficial for you if you work in a work environment and you wanted to really test the password security and test the password really how strong your password is. You can use one of these tools to really try to crack your password, acquire the SAM database, acquire the password, and try to really see if that password is easy to crack. This is part of you as a penetration testers work in the company to give an advice about how passwords are secured within the organization. Okay, طبعا this is for example here This is like how can look like so when you start, and what kind of password technology used, and what kind of operating system, and what kind of authentication protocols it can deal with. So this is all under the password thing. But I hopefully now you guys can understand that's okay. Once I exploit the machine, I now should gather information about the target machine, or to determine how important this machine. Okay, one of the tools is to basically start to gather information about the passwords. Some tools of exploitation like core impact and metasploit will allow you with post exploitation to gather more information and to run some certain exploit against some certain application that's really contain passwords. And we have seen this is in the slide that I showed you guys earlier. Okay, and once I got this password, okay, there is a life cycle to manage these passwords, specifically in post exploitation, from acquiring the password all the way to using. I showed you the process, but in the same times, you should be able to understand that in some of these stages, there is lack of tools. So you will have to do it manually, especially in the tracking phase. So this is the conclusion of what we have said about post exploitation and gather information, and more specifically, password management in this case. Okay, guys, does this make sense? Any questions so far? Hello? I
Yeah.
cannot really tell if you are here or no. So
Yes, with
if you
you,
can,
Mr. Shadi.
okay. So is this is clear, guys? So far, so good.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
clear.
great, great. Okay, Alhamdulillah. So let's move again. Again, we mentioned in the early beginning that's in our here, guys, is you need to do maintaining access in the early beginning, but I wanted really to explain the data harvesting and the password management. But again, here is maintaining access. Maintaining access in really, it's called persistence, is how to add yourself to be persistent in a network. So here, it's giving you a nice example. It's saying, now it used to be a difference between resistance and being stealth, but now both of meaning are really close to each other right now, because you wanted to be resistant in the network, or you wanted to be resistant in this host that you exploited, and then the same times you need to be as a stealth as possible. And that is what exactly the definition of being an APT, advanced persistent threats. And advanced persistent threats, guys, are the guys who go low and slow. Okay, so low means they are very stealthy, and slow they are persistent, so they can keep their maintaining access to the system for months until they reach their objectives. And again, why APT is dangerous? Because it's dangerous to detect them, and they usually are the nation states hackers or the hacktivism or the well-organized group that is really have enough funding in this. And that is why resistance is something that we really need to understand. And also going with persistence these days, guys, is as being stealth, which is the definition of basically ABT. In the old days, a rootkit helped you to maintain access. This is an old days. Okay, today rootkit is all about hiding. So something is hiding within the system will allow you to control the system, and it's more important, it's gonna be okay, so no one can really figure out. These are two concepts will go hand in hand, means they are now are like never before. They are really going together, because this is where the really dangerous attacks happen. Okay, again, if you are in a big bank, you should be worried about these kind of attacks, I would say. Or if you are in a big government institution, or maybe big industry, I would say industry like oil and gas in Saudi Arabia, then you should be always worried about this. And this is why we need, in a lot of cases, guys, someone as a threat hunters. And basically, the threat hunters is the one that you will go and look for specific threats that it doesn't really easy to detect in a normal ways. So in the normal ways, if someone compromise your machine and he is not really stealthy, or not he's really hiding, you can easily detect him by all this SIM technology and the normal SOC team, so it's easy, can be detected. But again, this is the reactive way. But in the proactive way is to really think, okay, I'm a big company. Most probably I have some competitors, or maybe most probably I have some people need to steal my trade secrets. So I'm assuming that I'm compromised. Let me get someone from the threat hunting to look into my system and find out if I'm being compromised or not. So this is what is really persistence is all about, and how the definition of persistence and hiding is going hand to hand. Okay, is persistence is maintaining access. Why? Target can get batches. Why I'm doing persistence? This is the reason. Because you exploited the machine, because basically there was a vulnerability. Maybe this vulnerability it's already discovered by the IT team, and now they will, they will patch it. So they have it in their schedule to patch it, but maybe you just schedule, you just exploit it before they do the patch. So you are already, next time you lose your connection, if you try to get back to this machine after the batch, it will not allow you to get in because the system is patched. Okay. And again, here it's saying that's why you wanted to maintain access, because some exploits are one shot only. It means what? It means once you exploited one time, you will not be able to exploit it again. So it was really, I would say, luck. You were lucky. You got lucky to exploit this machine. But if you try to really exploit it again, maybe the machine will not be stable. Okay, so and the machine started to start giving a blue screens, and this is happening a lot when you are doing buffer overflow exploitation. So you really need, once you get your foothold, to really try to escalate a privilege and maintain access right away, because you don't know if that machine will allow you to exploit it over and over, especially if the machine restarted, or especially if you lost the connectivity to this machine, or even the attacker lost his computer's power or something. So this is really you need to look at. Sometimes you need to return multiple times to the target. So this is طبعا understandable. We can understand that the attackers would like to go back and forth. And again, what the attacker, maybe first of all, he wanted to gather information about this machine. Okay, maybe later on he wanted to see if he can really gather information about the network. So wanted to go back and forth. Okay, target usefulness not always immediately known means what? Means that the attacker exploited the machine, but he doesn't really know how important this machine is. So he wanted to go back to check later on how important this machine. Or maybe the attacker, they didn't see a hack value for this company to exploit right now. So later on in the future, they found out this company are making billions of dollars, and let me go back, try to steal their trade secrets or something that is really important for this company. So I wanted to be able to come back. And that is all, I will not say this is all the reasons, but this is the main obvious reasons why I wanted really to maintain my access to a machine. Okay. The goal here, access target as often as needed, as useful, as this target is useful. Huge area of study. طبعا being resistance is through so many guys ways to be resistant. Metasploit does have a whole module, okay, of how to be resistance. You can check it out how it's really doing this. It tries to add certain registry key. It's trying to schedule some tasks, so you can really check how to be resistant in the system. There is, I said, Metasploit has already different modules for this. Sometimes resistance doesn't matter, especially if you are looking at that's one system that you exploited, and once you exploit it, you find out this target is useless, so you're not gonna use it at all. Okay, so this is really at that time it doesn't really make sense to have an access or to bother yourself with maintaining access. This is another thing. Okay, if we scroll down more here, okay, stages of resistance. Just before I go to stage of prophecy, did you know where is this picture is, guys? Resistance include access and configuration to maintain the initial foothold of the system. برافو يا تغريد. I like what Tagreed is saying, mashallah, motivated to really give me a good definitions today. It's good that you can use this, inshallah, one day, inshallah, in an interview. Okay, do you know where is this picture is, guys? Where is it, Ibtisam? Okay, I'm asking you, have you been in this place before? This is,
In Turkey?
yes, in Turkey. Where it
Yes.
is? What is they called it?
The mosque. Yeah, I go there, but I forget the name of the mosque.
Yeah, okay,
It's very
mashallah, good.
famous mosque. Yeah.
Yeah, bravo, yes, there's a Nasiba. This is called Aya Sophia. Okay, this
Yes,
is
Hagia
where,
Sophia. Yes. Yes.
yes, okay, this is where the news was really going crazy 6 months ago about this specifically, okay? Because this is used to be the biggest church in whole Europe. Okay, because it's that Istanbul used to be part of Europe before Muhammad al-Fatih opened Constantinople, and he got really the biggest church, and he turned it to a mosque, and it stayed to be a mosque for maybe 4 centuries. So from 16 something, 16th century, all the way to 1925. So 400 years. It used to be a masjid, and then Kamal Ataturk, طبعا, he wanted to please uh, the West. Okay, so he turned it to a museum, and then later on, what is really frustrated the West is they turned it to a mosque again.
Yeah,
So
very
this is the whole
interested
yeah,
place.
very
Yeah.
yeah. If you read about the whole story here, you can understand why they are making fuss about it. Okay, so here, guys, um, persistence, stages of persistence, initial access, exploit, stolen password. So this is basically the stages. Okay, the decisions, what tool to use. Okay, it depends about the operating system environment, the target dependency, setup, re-accessing of the target, cleanup, don't be a slob, it will get you caught. When you no longer need the target, leave no trace. So this is again what we have discussed in the beginning of this lecture. You add uh, a resistance, or you add a certain keys or a certain way or a backdoor to come back to the systems. And once you've done with these systems, you don't leave it, because if you are an attacker, it will help them to catch you. If you are a penetration testers who's the really hired you to do this, this is really bad to leave a bad to leave access door or a back door in the system, because someone else can find about it. And one of the more recommendation that we have already discussed in area beginning, if you added a back door, added authentication to this back door, so no one can really access your. This is also something we have already discussed. What kind of tools? Okay, what kind of tools that we're gonna use? طبعا these tools, I'm not gonna talk about what tools is it, but again, the persistence existing tools, add rootkits, add backdoors, dragons, port knockers, adding an account on the system. So basically, you add an account that you can use later on to log in at things like netcat, backdoor, NTD modification, process injection, stealing credentials. So this is all how to be resistant. If you guys never seen netcat, I will ask Abir or Asad to give you a small lecture about how netcat is being used, or a lab about netcat how being used. But again, one of the things is that the first thing I learned when I done ethical course in the US, the first thing that they taught us about how netcat can be used to create backdoors and access systems, because this is the ultimate backdoors. But this is back in 2010, so this was a long time ago. Okay. Resistance, there is different perspective on resistance. If you can always re-exploit, who cares? Inject, add, modify new vulnerabilities, hard to determine, miscellaneous. What do he mean by this, guys? Means once you already exploited a machine. You use it, Netcat? Okay, good. Thank you, Lamia. Okay, so once we exploit the machine, okay, guys, what he's trying to say here, in order to be resistance, you can use all these things that we talked about, like Dragon horse, backdoors, and all this other stuff. This is really good, okay? But then this is the old styles of being resistant. What the new styles of being resistant is to really create new exploits. No one knows about it except you, and exploit the new exploit that you introduced to the system. So maybe your systems, okay, just let me explain this is in some funny way. So now the attacker managed to exploit your system using a certain vulnerability in your Windows, okay? Now, okay, he managed to log in and now he is trying to be resistant. So maybe he can start to change your system somehow. Your system become vulnerable for this another methodology. For example, he will install a vulnerable application, okay, in your system, and this is will allow him later on to exploit. And when he exploited, then knows, and he will add a certain username and password to log into the system. So in a very simple way, let's say I exploited Windows machine. So what I will have, I escalated my privilege. Okay, now I'm part of this admin groups. So first of all, I will download a batch for this exploit. So no one can knows about this exploit. Okay, and no one can use it else. Okay, now because I'm an admin in this machine, I will install FTP service. FTP service will allow me to log in over port 21, okay, as an attacker. Okay, it will allow me also to access the system, and it will allow me to create a username and password to log into this system later on. Okay, so now I did three things together. First of all, I have patched the system so no one can use the vulnerability. I created my own backdoor with authentication. Okay, and later on also the attacker can use this FTP when he really exploit another database here, okay, that he can move the data from the database to this server, okay, and then server FTP is going to be used to transfer data to outside. So this is normal way of how the attacker really uses things. So you copy the data to a certain location in your network, and in this certain location in the network, they have a certain application running that allows them to push this data outside. And at the same time, they're using this application because it's vulnerable to basically to gain access to the system whenever they want and exfiltrate data as much as they want. So this is here, it's hard to find the bugs. Now imagine someone is really purposely, yani, with a lot of intention, putting the bugs in. So he's disabling firewalls, he's adding vulnerable applications. So these guys can really be resistant because of protocols. This is how resistance works. Okay, leveraging existing resistance, admin access, attack configuration management, GUI, total distribution. So basically, it's saying that sometimes the admin on the machines, they add some tools that allows them to go back. So again, what he's trying to say, or remote access this machine. So he's saying, leverage what is already exists. In a very simple way, just not to take you to a lot of discussion about this. Okay, so basically, some machines, guys, are really does have some tools that the administrator sometimes use to really access this machine and control this machine. Okay, if you find one of these tools, that is will be for the attacker is really a happy day for because now he can use the same tools to access this machine and maintaining his access, especially if he managed to compromise the username and password for the admin that's logged into this machine, or if he become an admin to this machine. So in this specific case, guys, the attacker will leverage what is exists in this machine. And this is sometimes they call it leaving on land. And leaving on land is basically saying that the attackers, every time you try to install new application or to create something or to add something in the registry or to add a backdoor, This is always leave traces, and it will allow you to, it allows the detection team to detect you. But if you're using the same tools that the admin in this organization are using to access the system, okay, then it's gonna be hard for someone to detect you, because it's saying, okay, I have someone is connecting to this machine using RDB, and we use RDB for normal communication and normal tools to really access from the admin side to our remote users. So it's not gonna make it suspicious for basically for the detection teams at least. So this is all part of also resistance. Um, I think right now, I think it's a good time. Also here, machines that have VNC installed already, replace installed VNC with a vulnerable version of VNC, and then this is will allow you to authentication bypass, and it will not really make difference, because a lot of the VNC connection within the organization will make your VNC is suspicious. And again, what is VNC, guys? If you've never seen VNC, VNC basically is something like it's remote desktop tool. It would allow someone to remotely log into your computer, okay, and really get your basically help you remotely. So if you look at the VNC here, it's something like the RDB in Windows. You will specify the machine, you will specify the connection and hit connect. It will connect to this machine, and it will allow you to see the desktop of this machine and play with this machine. Again, type. How about the password for the admin? Again, don't worry about it. If you find the VNC, you will find also in Metasploit later on. There is a specific uh, there is a specific gather information for VNC that will allow you to steal the VNC password already. What you can do is to gather the credential and run the VNC exploit against the VNC within this computer. And then once you get the username and password, you can use the VNC, which is already existing tools, to be coming back to this machine as much as they want. And again, VNC will give you a full access to this machine, to this machine using a tool that exists in the environment. So you don't have to do backdoors or rootkit. It will get you will not get detected by this because the VNC is already used. Okay, guys. Again, this is what I have told you guys. You make this machine or more vulnerable, and then you come back to this vulnerability or exploit this vulnerability that no one knows about it, like the FTP example that I told you guys. And this is also another way to be a resistance. I'm talking about, this is an advanced way to get the resistance. Okay, he's talking here about also you can add hidden fields in your web application no one knows about, and then you can use this hidden field in your web application to log in. So this is another way to do persistence. So I think right now we have already finished maybe 30 slides. There is some few slides, guys, about persistence. Okay, and then local information gathering. How can we gather information about the target here? And then it's basically using Metasploit for to do this local gathering. So I'm gonna and also this is a migration to a certain processes within your environment. And once you migrate to these processes, you will be able to scan or to keystroke these processes. And for example, here, this Win login is a service that runs in our computer that will allow us to authenticate in the beginning. So imagine you jump to this process, and there is also a tool within Meta Potato to migrate your process to another process, so you can jump to another process. And once you jump to this another process, what you end up finding is you can keystroke anything keylogger anything that this process will allow you. So if you manage to inject yourself in this Win login, later on you can turn the keystroke, and then you can get the keystroke of someone who is logging into the Windows. So you get basically his credential, username, and password. And this is for sure, this is how it's being done. So Git systems, it will allow you to scale privilege, and then Meta Protector will have a command. This is also post exploitation. It's called BS to list all the processes running in your computers. Once you run these processes, you find that when login service or program was running, so you migrate to this specific process here, the process name. And once you migrate to the process, later on you can run the key scan or a key scan dump. And the key scan dump is basically is a key logger that runs inside this process. And every time someone logging into this machine, it will get his keystroke basically and dump it in a file. And then later on, you can really see this dump and see his numbers. This is basically key scan start and key scan dump is going to be capturing the user's logins. So this is all, we say, local gathering information. And this is especially if you fail to crack a password. This is can be really a way to really get the username and password in easier ways and chance crack. If you fail to crack the password, here is gathering informations or credentials. This is also so many things that we can do here. And again, where we are right now from what we have mentioned in the early beginning of the lecture, we are in the data harvesting. So we managed to maintain the access, and now we're trying to harvest more data about these systems. We're looking at WinSSP. I explained what is in WinSSP. I explained that you can run, for example, scanning, exploiting against VNC and using this VNC also to maintain access. So all of these stages are here we talked about. Tomorrow we'll talk about a bit about internal network scanning and exploitation of new system and poverty. So this will be the topic for tomorrow. But for now, as you can see, this is all logical. And again, the post exploitation guys phase is really long phase. Yani if you give me a week to talk about post exploitation, I can take 1 week to talk only about post exploitation, and the methods can be used and different techniques. So it's really what we're trying to do again is trying to put your mindset that once you exploited the system, this is just a new beginning for being more careful, okay, and following the stages that I told you for maintaining access, harvesting data, or gather local information, and then you're trying to enumerate the network around you and then do lateral movement or pivoting that's later on we'll talk about. So this is basically the lecture of today. I hope this is really, again, it is not everything that we can say in these lectures, but just it's a beginning for the post-exploitation phase. So tomorrow, inshallah, client to create a new user on a target machine, but I don't know if that's maintain access or no. If you created a username, it's definitely something very good, Yashaza, to create a username. It's part of maintaining access. But the problem is you made a modification, okay? And modification means the same solution or the same SOC team, they will be able to detect, because this is one of the things that the same guys will be always wanted to detect. So they can add this every time a machine add the users or someone in the machine added to the group called admin, let me know. So this is can be very obvious step for the attack for the same solution to detect your move to maintain an access. But again, it's a maintaining access strategy, but it's easy to detect by the same team or the SOC team. But it's a good idea to talk about it. Okay, guys. So I will gonna give you guys a break. Let's go for 20 minutes break. I think 20 to 25 minutes break. Okay, and then when we come back, inshallah, Abir will take over and give you a demonstration. And we will keep doing demonstration until inshallah Wednesday when we have our exam. Any questions, guys, so far?
Thank you, Mr. Shadi.
Okay.
Have a good day, Shadi.
Inshallah, thank you guys very much. And I'm trying to really explain post exploitation, but again, it's really a long topic. So I'm gonna add this to our Discord. And once you guys have time, read these lectures. It's important. And again, inshallah, we'll see you inshallah after the break. Have a great day. Naif, why you not talking these days, Naif? You should be find these topics interesting. Or you taking some rest after the CH exam. Okay, now I understand. No problem. I understand that you need some rest after this, so it's okay. So I'm just gonna add this maybe later. Oh no, no. Where you taking? Okay, so I'm gonna add this to the group, guys, and then I'm gonna let you to review it later on, inshallah. Have a great day.